Hi, welcome. Today you're in a talk called Faster and Smarter Content with Machine Learning. I'm Mike Netsky, and I'm going to get started. So, AI is set to transform industries, including communications. So $1.4 to $1.6 trillion in value is to be unlocked through the deployment of AI in marketing and sales space. That's a huge amount of money, and it really is transforming these industries. And I'm Mike Netsky. I'm the Director of Technology at 4Kitchens. And what is 4Kitchens? 4Kitchens, we're a we create digital experiences that delight, scale, and meet and deliver measurable results. So we're a digital agency. We're distributed originally from Austin, Texas, but you can find us web chefs in 15 different states across the country. And here at Texas Camp, you can find quite a few of them. So look for people in these green jerseys or T-shirts and that kind of stuff. And I was converting our slides to a new slide template, so there's some duplicates.
Okay.
I thought I deleted them. I like this picture of me a lot better, so we're gonna stick with that one. So here's the agenda for today. We're gonna talk about some terms and a little bit of background. Talk about how the future is now. Talk about how it can help you today, and how it can be used in the future. So I'm going to be talking about how it affects the editorial process. And there are three key areas where machine learning is also transforming the publishing industry. They're personalization, analytics, and chatbots. So those are not topics that I'm talking about here. Yet another duplicate slide. Isn't that a much better template? You get the before and after. All right. Let's dive into some terms. So machine learning. It's a category of algorithms that allows software applications to become more accurate in predicting outcomes without being explicitly programmed. So I'll go into a little bit more about what that means and how it's different from programming in a second. Artificial intelligence is more of a meta term that talks about how it makes it possible for machines to learn from experiences, adjust to new inputs, and perform human-like tasks. They're kind of used interchangeably. I don't know. It depends on how many engineers were probably involved with writing something. But yeah, those are like you can kind of think of artificial intelligence as the meta term, and then machine learning as a subset. One other subset that is very important to all of us, because we all work with text, is natural language processing. So it's a branch of artificial intelligence that helps computers understand, interpret, and manipulate human language. So how is machine learning different than what we really think about when we think about programming? So programming, you take data, take inputs, and then in a programming language like PHP or JavaScript, you write rules, and then you get mostly predictable outcome, depending on, I guess, how good you are at programming. The rules and the things that you do with the data are written explicitly by humans. Machine learning is different. So it takes data and statistics, and then from that you get outputs and confidence scores. The models are built from examples. So you give it sample data, and then it creates the rules itself without explicit input from humans. This has really big This has huge opportunities because the machine learning allows computers to learn similarly to the way that we learn as human beings. It makes them a lot better at dealing with really fuzzy things like what's in a picture, or is that a cat from the side or a cat from the front. But it also comes with some risks, and I'll talk about those later on. Because it is only as good as the data that you put into it. And that has huge implications, and I'm sure everybody's heard stories about how machine learning and artificial intelligence, that there are lots of dangers with bias. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind as you're dabbling in these waters. So what's it good at? It's really good at finding and following patterns and making predictions. You can take you can build a machine learning algorithm that is fed lots of pictures, and in a portion of those pictures you can identify for it where there's a dog in the picture, and then you can feed it more and more pictures and it'll be able to find the dogs itself. They can get better over time, so the model can be further refined. So when you're programming or whatever, you just kind of like you write your rules and you can write more rules, but it doesn't change or doesn't get better. It's different with machine learning. And the most important thing, the most relevant to us, is that it allows computers to see into a really complicated stuff like content and images. So what are the risks? So building models takes time and iteration. There's a need to collect the data, to clean the data, to label the data that you want to feed into it. And then you also have to actually run the algorithms and the learning stuff. And a lot of times those will take multiple hours, perhaps overnight, etc. So you're not only using a lot of time, you're using a lot of computer processing power to create these models. They can easily amplify bias, and that both in the traditional sense of like that we think about bias, but then unhidden biases that aren't as controversial, because you just feed it a subset of data that you that you didn't think was biased. And the other thing that's to keep in mind, it's only really applicable if you have a lot of data to work with. So if you have 10 blog posts, like machine learning algorithms aren't going to help you necessarily in like creating a classification algorithm for them. If you have 10,000, it's very much going to be applicable. So things to keep in mind. The other risk in AI transformation, which is kind of like the next sort of stage of digital transformation, is that organizations are not approaching it from the right perspective. And this was also kind of true with content management when like a lot of the agencies that you kind of see in the Drupal space were kind of starting up, is that a lot of organizations were trying to get in the business of making websites because they knew they needed the website, and it just wasn't kind of really coming together for them, so they created this great vast market for it. It's a similar problem with artificial intelligence. So you don't, if you're kind of trying to take advantage of it, the first place to start isn't by hiring data scientists and building a practice from the ground up. The first place to start is probably leveraging a lot of the APIs that are available, and that I'll be talking about today. So, so what are content management systems like today? Go to the next slide. So they're a tool for like humans to categorize, combine, and retrieve content. While they're very powerful, they're blissfully ignorant of what's being put into them. So like you can like add a search to it, and like that'll maybe like find word stems and things like that, but it has no idea like what your article is about, unless you explicitly go through and tag that this article is about Drupal, or that this article is about JavaScript, etc. Same thing with your images. Like you upload images to your CMS, and it has no idea what's in that image. It could be an image of a cat, or a building, or a person, and it doesn't care. It just bits to the CMS. It can't read or see. So what are the opportunities? Like, what if it could? What are the opportunities that like that open up if like your CMS, if your computer could actually understand what you're putting into it? And like the truth of the matter is like it already can, and these capabilities are really kind of there's a lot of really low-hanging fruit. So I'll talk about a few of the different ways that it's kind of seeping into things. All the largest publishers are leveraging AI to one degree or another. So if you're visiting a major publication like Bloomberg, like the New York Times, artificial intelligence is involved with the content that you're seeing there. So they are creating algorithms that are automatically writing summaries of Little League games. That's like a hyper-local beat that would be very expensive for an organization to actually have somebody at a Little League game. But a lot of the data about like how the game went is actually pretty easy to feed into a computer. And then using that combined with natural language processing to actually create like a summary of the game. Also using this a great deal in financial reporting and reporting around financial disclosures, because again, those disclosures are very formulaic, and the commentary about them is relatively well established. So you can very easily sort of create news articles about financial disclosures. The BBC, and this is one of the most interesting sort of applications that I've seen, is that they are right now experimenting with trying to roll out a AI-assisted writing suite of tools that allow editors to create placeholders in the articles that they're writing that their AI will substitute with personalized content. So the example that they give is that, say you're writing an article about homelessness in the UK. Instead of, and in that article you're quoting some statistics about homelessness. Instead of writing about using those statistics for London for all of the UK, you're, the article will, if you're in Cardiff, the article will quote statistics about the homelessness problem in Cardiff. If you're in London, it'll use the statistics from London, etc. All kind of pulling from a data set and being turned into natural language through these algorithms. So that's to me pretty fantastic and just like kind of mind blowing, right? It has huge implications and this is happening today. So this is not like something that's going to happen in the future. Like these are all things that we're experiencing.
And does it? Well, I can.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Ask your question.
But I'm interested in hearing like from. Does it know if I'm a user in Cardiff? Does it know that I'm in Cardiff and then it serves up that information to me, or is it programmed in to like spit out? Like you have to, tag it, some Cardiff and London and all this.
Yeah, so it combines like the personalization that you like that understands where the context of the user, so that the user is coming from Cardiff, and we'll use that to alter the article that you're viewing. So to make it more personalized, more relevant, and more relatable.
So like GeoIP or something.
Yeah.
Figure out that I'm there, and then the content's spit out, but there's a placeholder. And that placeholder is then filled in on the fly based off of my GeoIP.
Exactly.
From a data set. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
that's what I was getting at, like the IP address and all that stuff.
Makes sense.
Interesting.
So the other place that like the AI is kind of like all around us is in Google Photos, and I kind of came across this because I was playing around with some of these like the sort of underlying APIs. And I was wondering like how much of this was implemented in Google Photos, and it all is. So if you go into Google Photos, you can search for, you can like type in girl, and it'll pull up every picture you've ever taken of a girl. If you type in tree, it'll pull up every picture you've ever taken of a tree. If you type in pink, it'll pick all the pictures that are kind of predominantly pink. So that's what Google Photo does today. Like, it's a free service. Shouldn't everybody's CMS have these capabilities in their media library, like, right away? I mean, that's like, that to me is just like a huge missed opportunity and a huge place where kind of like this can kind of permeate into all the work that we're doing. Another way that it's kind of immediately available are services that help you write. So there's Grammarly, which is a paid service. There's Hemingway Editor, which is a kind of a free alternative to it, an open source alternative to it. And what this does is it gives you feedback on not just if you like spelled something wrong, but if like on the tone of the sentences that you're writing. And it gives you feedback on whether you're using adverbs and language correctly.
Nuanced.
Yeah, and it's very, I use Grammarly all the time, and it's a lifesaver because I'm the worst when it comes to things like that. And like they just roll out a new feature where it helps you understand the sentiment that you're communicating. So you can kind of see if you're like if you think you're writing things that are happy and whether they really are. And that's another capability that I could very much see, that would benefit just about everybody's content management system, right? Another one is in moderation, and this is a project that Google has been working on with a number of publishers. So they're with the New York Times and a couple other publishers. They've created this set of algorithms and APIs and plugins that allow you to both automatically moderate content and then provide feedback to the writers, to the people who are creating the content. So it's mostly used for comments and things like that. But if you go to the Perspective API site, you can kind of like there's a couple tools that you can play around with, and you can see how immensely powerful this stuff is, and how the applications can really make the internet potentially a lot more welcoming, more thoughtful place for conversations. And because not only can it just provide can it just stop comments that are clearly toxic, it can give feedback automatically to those writers of why their content is being flagged or what they would need to change to make it acceptable. So that's pretty cool. So, of course, want to talk about some of the Drupal modules that are out there. There aren't quite as many as I'd like. So Automatic Text Alternative creates alternative text for your images, and it actually does a pretty bang-up job of doing that. Which can have great implications for SEO and also for accessibility. Google Cloud Vision, there's a module that's pretty well built out, and it's very easy to hook that up and provide some of those capabilities that I showed with Google Photos to your media library on your Drupal site. And then there's a suite of tools called Intelligent Content Tools, which provides sort of entries to some of this stuff. These are some of the APIs that are out there from Google that you can, with a little bit of programming, just hook right up to your Drupal site. Their natural language processing provides a huge amount of tools around parsing sentences, parsing text, categorizing it based on their kind of universal categories. Cloud Vision, I'll show in a slide a little bit later, kind of like how much you can get out of that. And if there's one thing that everybody should kind of go play with, it's that. And then Google Cloud AutoML. So what that is it's a very easy way to build machine learning algorithms, particularly for creating classification models. So we actually played around with that, and we created a site called Happygram.ai. And what this does is it is built to take happy memories and create them and categorize them into a set of categories, and then also kind of illustrate them with these little Instagram-ish things. And since we're probably doing well on time, I'd love to just kind of show that to you guys after I get through these slides. But this is so the AutoML thing is probably the least utilized and probably one of the most relevant because classification, categorization of content is a problem that everybody kind of has. We work with a lot of large organizations, and one of the we'll create a content model for them, and then them sort of sticking to that content model is always a challenge because people have different ideas about where, like how much they want to spend tagging their content, and also how much they want and what content belongs where. Building an algorithm around that, taking that out of the writer's hands, speeds up their workflow and makes it more consistent. So definitely a thing to take a look at. I've been talking a lot about Google because that's kind of where we and I have the most experience. But every cloud provider out there is making a huge push for this. Partially because there's a huge amount of opportunity, and then secondly because for everyone, and it's like these are like really great things to apply. But then also, I don't know, it's like they're very motivated to roll these things out. I mentioned earlier that they use a lot of computing power. And what are these people all selling? They're all selling computer hours, right? So it's a great business opportunity for them. Take some of that their advertising with a grain of salt and whatever. But yeah, but that's good for us because a lot of these things are becoming easier and more accessible all the time. So yeah, quick view. Like this is some of the things that the natural language processing can do. So it can analyze sentiment. Like I said, it can tell you whether content that's being written is happy or sad. It's going to be really great on being able to understand user feedback or comments or things like that. It does that automatically. It does that pretty well. Analyzing parts of speech. So being able to take a sentence and parse not just what are the verbs and the nouns, but what is the sentence about? Like what is the most important, what is the most salient thing in the sentence? The other thing you can do is you can extract topics and categorize them into these things. So you can see kind of in a little screenshot there, it picks out Google and knows that that's an organization. It picks out Android, knows that that's a consumer good. Does that for things that are not directly related to Google as well. And then it can classify content automatically into the categories that like Google kind of has set up. Google Cloud Vision. So the best sort of illustration of that is being able to sort of see how this kind of random photo that has something in front of the dogs, and it's still able to not only tell that these are dogs, tell that they're Labrador retrievers with pretty high confidence. It knows that there's a kennel involved in this, which is kind of wild, and thinks that it might be an animal shelter because it is my backyard, but actually it's at times can be very indistinguishable from an animal shelter, and that there's dog breeds involved. I mean, it's pretty, it's really robust. It's not just like I don't know, finding a face if it's a pretty well framed face. It can help understand the objects that are in images. It has a very surprisingly good color palette tool that kind of tells you what are the colors that are involved. So if you want to find pictures that are mostly green and things like that. It can help you censor images, and it can also assist with. It has smart cropping tools built in that you can just sort of say crop out the thing, and it'll do that. And that's all just through a very simple API. And if you can hook your website up to any API, you can have all this stuff available.
What's the link to try it here?
It's in the slides, but it's like if you just type Google Cloud Vision in the search bar, it'll bring you there. And I'll tweet out the slides after this. And then AutoML. So this is being able to create custom classification models. So the natural language processing tools, their classification model is static. So it's like it understands whatever classifications that they've set up. The AutoML tools allow you to create your own. So in the example that we have in Happygram, we uploaded a bunch of like happy memories from a data set, labeled a couple hundred of them, and then into these 7 categories, and then it can the new ones that you upload to it get categorized automatically. So for your blog, for your website, these can be tools that can be built into both do these things automatically, and then probably more importantly, and in a way that a lot of these things should be viewed, is a way to augment the editorial process. So instead of just automatically taking things and putting them into categories, providing suggestions for categories to an editor and giving them an opportunity to say yay or nay, speeding up the process, but still including that human touch. So more broadly, what can it do? Or where are places that AI can be applied in your content management workflow? So number one is automating away menial tasks. The other one is, and this was kind of the example from the BBC project that I talked about earlier, is taking intentionally combining data with templates in ways that are kind of beyond what we kind of think of that, where we have like different fields or whatever. This would be like replacing sentences, etc. Analyzing content or images and then providing metadata about that. So if you want to extract what a blog article was about, it's great at that. If you want to know what's in your media library down to a very fine degree, it's great at that. It can provide suggestions to improve content, tools like Grammarly and Hemingway, and again, categorizing content and images into your custom categories. So that's what it can do. So what should you watch out for? Whenever you're doing this, bias should always be top of mind. A very smart friend of mine said, and this was actually talking about automation, but it applies here very, very applicably, that anybody can make a mistake, but it takes automation to really mess things up. And that's absolutely true here, and is even significantly worse because these algorithms and the rules that they use, they're opaque. You can't like kind of audit the code or like look for the if statement where it's making a bad decision. You can only feed it good data and then test to see what data comes out. Google has written quite a bit about the core principles that they use when they're applying machine learning and bias and AI. And that's a great place to kind of start when kind of like looking at this from a social good perspective. But even outside of social good, the bias becomes important because you, like let's say that you, like one of the common problems that you can run into is that if your data set, if you're trying to create a classification model and the data set is really skewed towards a particular category, that category will be overly inflated in the results. So it's that kind of bias too. It's not just biases and things that are racially motivated, etc. So that's the end of the presentation. Any questions? And then I'll jump into some of the demo stuff.
I'd be interested in hearing a good use case, like where you guys have used this and how it benefited, like a real world example.
Yeah, so the biggest place is in the media library. So like taking and being and actually we used it on our own site, and it didn't seem like it was that big of a deal, but we found that we could reuse a lot of our like previous like hero images for blog posts and stuff like that a lot more effectively just by hooking this up. And
I can certainly see with big publishers
Mhm.
who have lots of content.
yeah, but we but for us it's like we have like I don't know how many blog posts 4 Kitchens has written, but it's not it's 13 years worth of blog posts, but it's not like it's not the New York Times level of stuff. So that's the image stuff is the lowest, absolutely like bottom rung of stuff that is useful.
So you just apply that to the media library?
Yeah. So our website is actually a WordPress site. So there's actually a plugin that like just plugged right in, and it worked like completely without literally without any intervention. Like it was like you just had to type in like the API key and that was it. And the Google Cloud Vision stuff for Drupal, like depending on how the media library is set up, it's a little bit more complicated, but yeah, it works like pretty much out of the box.
I'm on a local news site, and I don't know how many images we have, but we have 10,000 pieces of content. So since we launched in 2010, so I mean the notion of doing that for all of our images is just
yeah, it's great.
because interns along the way probably did not put the right tags on things.
Exactly.
I mean that's just that's life.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, it's now not only can you label that stuff, but like going forward, they won't need to, right?
What about sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. With regard to accessibility,
Alternative text.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the Drupal modules that like is pretty much works out of the box, and it does a much better job than editors not doing it consistently, right?
Yeah, have you ever did this with a chatbot? Have you ever integrated any type of AI or machine learning with a chatbot?
We haven't, although it is on the short list of things that we really want to do. There's quite a bit. If I actually like Google it, like there's quite a few examples with that and Drupal and Dialogflow and that kind of stuff. So it's actually relatively easy to get started with, and it's pretty cool. But yes, that's absolutely a place to play it.
You mentioned one case that as a local publisher, I care about, I don't care about high school football games, but I appreciate that. Is it possible there's a way to apply that to sort of do the equivalent of box scores for planning and zoning and meetings like that are just these horrific things that nobody can go to and nobody can cover, but we want to extract that information and let the public know what's going on?
Absolutely. Like that, like there's probably more like that. That's not something that you can just sort of like wake up one morning and just sort of plug it into some like API or something like that. But and there's some development work involved. But that's a burgeoning application. And
I think that would be something that publishers all over the country would want.
Exactly. So if you're interested in you should follow up because we're looking for opportunities like that to work with publishers and things like that. But let me show you guys this really quick, which is happygram.ai. And so I need somebody to give me a happy memory. Who wants to do it?
Okay. Paragliding in Spain.
So tell me more. What was it like?
freaking amazing. Jumping off of a mountain and gliding around for hours.
Hours.
Hours?
As long as you're catching thermals, you can stay up there all day long.
Do they
You go down, you catch a thermal, and you like.
You get pre-training in thermal catching?
Huh?
Do you get pre-training in thermal catching?
No, I went with an instructor, so he knew what he was doing. I was just there along for the ride.
And how did it make you feel?
Exhilarating. So exhilarating, I almost threw up.
Is that the next question?
There's
We
an
need
H
to go
in
back?
there.
Grammarly is here for me.
You don't need it.
So what you said, exhilarating, it was...
So exhilarating she wanted to throw up.
Yeah, that's what I said. I can't remember how high the mountain was, but you couldn't.
There's a mountain.
You couldn't even see anyone, cars or people. You were so high.
Wow, that's
It's
amazing.
crazy, yeah.
I've gone skydiving, and it's phenomenal.
Skydiving is exhilarating as well.
So there's more of an explanation once we get in, but what we're kind of creating is like a collage to sort of illustrate this happy moment. And so it actually, what it did is it used Google Natural Language Processing to find out what this was, what we were talking about here, and it sent that over to the Unsplash API to find some images. These are actually really good. One of the things that's the most limiting about this whole demo is that the images in Unsplash, which is it's not quite open source, but it's a great place to find free stock images that have a very liberal rights with them. Is that they're not labeled that great, and they're not labeled really pedantically. So, anyways, room for improvement on their side. I'm just going to pick a couple. That looks like it's paragliding related. None of these look like Spain to me. This may be generic enough that. Go catch whoosh. Jump off mountain.
Volcanoes.
Only a mountain. Oh, there's another great paraglider. Okay. So, I just want to. What was your name?
Tracy.
With the.
Y. T-R-A-C-Y.
And then skip your email. So you can go here and you'll be able to find it. So, so there's our. There's the collage. Since unrelated to AI, there's this. So first of all, if you haven't never played around with Unsplash, it's phenomenal and it's a great place for stock images. Unsplash.
Splash.
Unsplash. Yeah. Second of all, to create these collages, we used a service called Cloudinary, which is phenomenal for image manipulation. So you can kind of see there's like a tinge to the photos. I'll explain where how we get to the tinge, but the tools around it are phenomenal. So what does it do? So it uses the Google Natural Language Processing to find out what this text was about. And it does a great job. Like this whole piece of text was about paragliding. And it didn't get confused and didn't think it was about Spain or didn't think about the mountains. It was about paragliding. Then we send that out, find images. The sentiment. So part of the reason I asked you, how does it make you feel?
Terrified, or
is to goose the sentiment score because when we were first doing this demo at DrupalCon, we noticed that a lot of the happy memories had a very neutral sentiment score because they were descriptive without having any feeling words in them. Like people were like, oh, I went to I had dinner with friends and that kind of stuff, and not talking about how it made them feel. Interesting.
Therapy talk in there. How do
Yeah.
you
Yeah. So then this is the categorization model. So these are the different categories that it's trained on, and it'll find that it'll categorize it based on that, based on the model that we built. there were only about 100 or 200 sort of sample pieces of content that needed to be picked, and then the training set was, I think, a few thousand. But even with those numbers, it does a pretty good job. It does actually a really good job. So this is, if you were to categorize this without looking at the scores, you'd probably say it's either about nature or enjoy the moment, right? And that's what the algorithm thinks as well.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then we use some of the tools on Cloudinary to add a sheen so that all of the similar items look like they're part of a set. These are all a little bluish.
Similar look and feel.
Yeah. And there you go. So I don't know. I thought that that last part, that was the thing that really kind of blew my mind, is that it was pretty easy to set up. Nobody on our staff is a data scientist or really has been diving into this more than experimentally, and like there you go. Like all this stuff is just there at your fingertips. So
yeah, I was kind of curious, especially on that last sentence, if it was gonna skew it by talking about wanting to throw
up, but no.
But it was smart enough to filter that out. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and this doesn't just work for like a little couple sentences. It'll work for a whole blog post. The only I can remember the URL, but we even set it up on Happygram that you could just like dump something in there, and it does a great job. Interestingly enough, we found that some of the first content that we're experimenting with, it wasn't doing a very good job. It's like why? Like why isn't this? It wasn't really finding what the blog post was about. And then we went back and read those blog posts. They weren't ours, but they're things we just found on the internet. And it was really hard to understand what the blog post was about. So,
Yeah, the original content itself was
yeah.
not.
Yeah, so no wonder the computer couldn't understand what
Right.
it was about. Well, cool. Yeah, so I think we're coming up to time. What time are we supposed to end today?
Yeah, you're at 11:30 right now. And
So we have like 15 minutes left.
yeah.
Well, great. Well, what other questions do we have?
Campfire to warm up.
I know, it's so
No, I
cold.
can't do anything.
He's tried, but it didn't work.
I'd be interested in seeing more about what BBC and New York Times and other news organizations
Yeah.
you mentioned. Is there anything out there about what they're doing?
I don't have any of it at my fingertips to be able to show you, but I can actually go back to that slide, and I can tell you what they're. I kind of left it out when I was talking about it, but
And is anybody using it for local football?
not that I know of, like just off the top of my head. But
Like the Little League example, is that just taking actual inning 1 through 9, or,
No, it's one of my friends I think is doing it in Ohio, and I'm just not sure what tools he's using. But he's trying to do it for all the Friday night football games. And
Oh, you mean just
fitting it
grabbing
through
stuff off of Twitter?
Using sort of an API.
Oh, like
Yeah.
combing.
Yeah.
I think Twitter would be the better one, because most everybody publishes like tons of sports on Twitter for during high school games. Like almost, yeah, any night, tons of people are using hashtags.
Mhm.
So you can just comb Twitter for hashtags and get all the scores. There's, I know you talk about Ohio and Michigan, the Detroit Free Press. That's what they do, is they have a bot, and that bot all it does is comb Twitter for any football highlights and then aggregates them into their own, and then just spits it out, because they don't have, obviously they don't have the
Right.
money. No newspaper has the money anymore to cover it.
Mhm.
So.
And so one of the ways that they're one of the approaches that they're using, and it like works particularly well for baseball, is that is taking the the events that happen in the game, because that's all actually all like recorded, even for like a little league game, like that's all recorded like very sequentially and very in a way that's easy to predict, and then summarizing that using natural language. So instead of it being just a list of what happened in the first inning and what happened in the second inning, etc., it'll go through and say like in the first inning this person hit a a double, and then this like and then there was a grand slam or something. There's
Bring up
know enough about
MaxPreps.
baseball to make that example.
MaxPreps.com. Not only does MaxPreps.com do that, but they'll even have a thing where they'll show you like a video, like a 3.5 to 5 minute video recap of the game, and no one covered the game.
That's
They like
phenomenal.
literally.
What was the say again? What,
MaxPreps.com.
Max Preps?
Yeah, you look up any sport team you want, any high school sport team you want in the country,
Huh.
and pick up any game that you want. You'll go to it, and they'll for each game they will give you a recap of the game. No one covered the game at all. It's just automated. The full thing is automated. They'll pick things. They literally randomly go out and grab things, and they'll have this slideshow collage of stuff that just AI used to just make it look like somebody actually covered it, and no one did. It's all automated. Check it out, maxpreps.com.
So the specific things to look for. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, being a journalist, since back when there were actually newsrooms full of journalists, the notion of how to fill that void of the lack of people, right? But and to get information out to people in a way that isn't skewing it, right? I mean, it's just straightforward, straight up stuff, and not.
Yeah, the only downside about the MaxPreps is if you read sports stuff, you can tell that it was a bot because it's so generic. But if you don't normally do that, like if you don't normally watch ESPN or something, you'll be like, whoa, this is cool. Somebody covered this. Like, no, nobody covered it. That's not how it
Bot doesn't have
Yeah.
personality.
Right, and it doesn't
Yeah.
have the great writing style.
Well,
like
what's-
sports writers and commentators?
No, it just grabbed everything
It's
and
like
threw it all
here's the
together.
Yeah.
facts. It's like the box score.
What's surprising though is a lot of that stuff is actually is also like not that far off. So for it to actually have like a style and things like that. And if you look up like Markov generators, it's a algorithmic technique of taking like a bunch of text and then creating new text that sounds like it. And there's some hilarious examples of it. So
On
the
the other hand of it, I mean, we've got Idiot San Antonio has 19 school districts, right? No, even back when newsrooms were full of people, there were not enough reporters to cover 19 school board meetings, a month. And so the notion of being able to try to scrape that and at least get the information out there so that people could then know, gee whiz, there's an issue that I need to go pay attention to.
absolutely.
I bet
Something
it's
better
cool.
than
It's
nothing.
hard to get
Right.
somebody to pay attention to entirely one.
Yeah.
Have you tried to sit through one of those things?
And
Like
sadly,
10
I've
hours
spent a
matters.
great deal of my career in school board meetings.
It's like, is this thing gonna end?
Yeah.
So the specific examples to look into. From the Little League games and New York Times, it's called Heliograph.
Heliograph?
So Forbes has a tool called Bertie. Bertie, BERTIE. And Bloomberg has something unimaginatively called Cyborg. And then the story from the United Kingdom is called the Radar Project from the BBC. So, yeah, and we were just at O&A this year, and there were quite a few companies and projects out there that were talking about these kinds of things. So this is definitely something's happening in the publishing space.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions or any other ideas that people want to talk about? We only have a couple minutes. Or we can break early and get ready for lunch. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.